When I was asked about the past, it's kind of the reverse of what I normally do. And normally I get asked about the future. So I thought I'd threaten to do 10 decades in 10 minutes and see how we get on. But I might just truncate that a bit to try and capture some other moments. But I'd just like to start off by saying thanks to Barry for having us all here and all the MIG team for what they put together, which is a great lunch. I'd also like to thank Barry and the MIG team for their support for Children in Need, which was only 5 days ago. And in case you didn't know, through texting and some of the work that's been done by many players in this room, Children in Need raised more than £1.7 million on one evening of Children in Need. So congratulations, Barry. Thank you. I should also add that the charity texting service managed to carry at least 40% O2 customers, so either O2 customers are more generous than others, or the promotion was very appealing to them. And for future charity appeals, I think we need more advertising on screen, but that's not Barry's fault. So 10 years ago, Marconi was famous because he was granted the Nobel Prize for radio. Can you imagine any greater inventions in the last century than radio? Internet, perhaps the jet engine, maybe the computer. But actually, we've come a long way since Marconi's days. And actually, some of the Marconi inventions only became famous when there was somebody on the Titanic trying to say, we've got the criminal that seems to be the one you need back from the ship to London. And subsequently, radio became much more famous. In 1939, the first use of portable radios in World War II for soldiers. They weren't cellular, they were portable radios. 1949, the cellular technology was invented in the USA, and subsequent inventions such as the transistor, the IC, and miniaturization and computing have all helped propel mobile to be a huge industry. In 1979, I had the privilege 30 years ago of seeing the first Chicago trials. They were more successful, I would say, than the other agreement in 1979, the Lancaster House Agreement. For those of you who remember some of the history of Ian Smith and Robert Mugabe, that was just down the road 30 years ago. But the Chicago trials led to significant interest in mobile technology. And in the UK, we saw mobile launch in January 1985. And no, I was not there at the very beginning, but nearly. I've certainly never been introduced as the ghost of the past before, but maybe I should dream about going back to 1985 as well. And what we will be marking in January is 25 years of mobile in this country, in the Science Museum, which will herald the opening of new plans for new galleries in communications and computing at the Science Museum. So if you're interested in the 25-year anniversary, that's coming up in January, on the 21st of January. So in this country, we were pretty well analog cellular for 7 years, 1985 to 1992. I was involved from about 1987, although I was made a director in 89. And in case you don't remember back in those heady days, the phones were black and white. They cost around £2,000 each. It typically cost 33 pence a minute for a voice call within the M25. And if you happen to drift beyond the M25, it could reduce to 25p if you were lucky. Billing systems were rather clunky. Service provision was the order of the day. It wasn't just a network business, it was a partnering business with lots of distribution channels. Some of those companies are still around today. Carphone Warehouse only really started in 1989, but some of the others have certainly been around for a number of years. But when you imagine phones at around £2,000 and no texting, no roaming, nothing in the way of internet content, internet wasn't really around then, it was really quite remarkable. But we could see a need to go to digital. We could see a need because, frankly, we just said, look, this is crazy, us buying these expensive handsets to resell to somebody, when if we had the economies of scale of Europe, we could do a lot more. So in 1987, something was signed called the GSM Memorandum of Understanding. These acronym soups get everywhere, don't they? And that was signed by Chris Gent for Vodafone and Colin Davis for Cellnet, as was. And we were the first competing operators to sign the GSM MOU that subsequently became the GSM Association. But just imagine two competing operators who were competing head-to-head, competing with 10 PTTs from Europe, some of whom could barely speak English, if I can be rude for a minute, but also had very little idea about anything beyond a monopoly. They were generally PTTs. So from 87 onwards, we started to build a whole ecosystem called GSM, and I'm pleased to say that there are close to 4.3 billion GSM customers today. ITU's latest forecast for the end of this year is 4.6 billion. So we've not done a bad job in 22 years, even if some might complain about some things. In In 1989, we saw the first GSM trials in this country. In 1992, 3, depending which network, we saw the first launches in this country. But the aim was to get towards a much more mobile and a much more mobile voice, mobile services world, rather than just voice. But generally, it was very much a voice world. And we have to fast forward to 1999 before we even saw a significant number of text messages. Texting just started as the first PC to mobile solution in about 1992 as an invention, as an interesting example. But until we actually could send a text message from one network to another, it didn't take off. Surprise, surprise. It's about communities. It's about communications. So there are many sectors. I would particularly single out the healthcare area that is not using messaging. I would certainly single out transport as having a lot more scope to use more in the way of messaging, whether it be text or email. And I would strongly suggest that education will be very important in this area as well. Now, I don't want to dwell too much on the future because that's not my turn. But what I'd also say is that some of the things that we did as the Mobile Data Association have tried to open up this industry to many partners. So things like shortcodes, introducing shortcodes, which is a key enabler for the charity donations that have just taken. But I think also some of the areas of a shared understanding and bringing knowledge together. And we can see that we're not at the end of the journey yet. We can certainly see a lot more scope for mobile internet and mobile marketing. And I think hopefully with the expertise in the room, you can grab that knowledge where you need it. What are the key characteristics of mobile? Well, it's personal, far more personal than a television set, if I can be rude to the television industry for a minute. It's certainly interactive. It's certainly much more inclusive and more immediate. And certainly it's modern and scalable and it's digital. We've been digital since 1996, and we're now talking about advanced digital and adding in more speeds, more capability, more screen sizes, more facilities. Yes, it sometimes is complicated, lots of acronyms, but I think unless we work together, we won't grow this industry. This industry's come a long, long way in 100 years, and certainly a long, long way in 25 years. Enjoy it, make the most of it, and enjoy the lunch. Thanks for being here. Cheers.